It's super easy to make chicken stock, but sometimes we don't have time. Sometimes we haven't made it. And so we go to the boxed stuff. That's what this is. This is boxed. This is about a cup and a half of boxed chicken stock. A little tip is to actually add a little bit of gelatin about 10 minutes or so before you let it bloom a little bit. And what that does is it gives you a nicer mouthfeel for your pan sauces. So we're going to kind of create a pan sauce. I'm air quoting pan sauce here because we're not actually going to be using the fond from the cooking. We're going to actually just make it a thing, but we're still going to put it in a pan, so it's still pan sauce. So just a little bit of this gelatin right over the top. Just sprinkle it over the top and let it bloom. Let it bloom means it's going to absorb the liquids, and it'll kind of give a little gelatinous flavor to it. So, the idea of a pan sauce is you take the like if say you cook a steak, pork chop, chicken breast, whatever it is, you're cooking in the pan, you take those out and you're letting them rest. What you do is you put stuff in it that will bring up all that fond, the flavor bits that are stuck to the bottom, and it cleans it up. We're not doing that tonight, so we're kind of making a pan sauce gravy type thing, but it's going to follow the same kind of thought processes of a pan sauce. Normally you'd have some fat. So we're just going to add a little bit of olive oil. You sit there and say pan hot. Pan hot does not mean pan hot. It means your pan's up to the temperature that you want it. This is the one thing that people don't do. They hear pan hot, so they crank it all the way to high heat. Well, I don't need my pan at high heat. I need it to sizzle like that. So I want to sweat this out a little bit. This is about 2 tablespoons of shallots, maybe a tablespoon and a half of shallot. I'm going to add a little bit of garlic, not a lot, just a touch. The rest is garlic's for something else later. Okay, so just a little bit of garlic, and now add a little white wine and let that go. Now we're going to add that chicken stock, and we're just going to bring it up to a boil. We really want it to reduce quite a bit, so it'll take a little while with that much liquid. Normally with that much liquid, normally you use maybe half that amount of liquid in a pan sauce, but because we're doing it a little differently, it's all right. So we're going to start getting our schnitzel ready. These are this pork loin cutlets, really thin sliced. You can pound them out a little thinner. I don't think we're going to need to. These are really thinly sliced. We're just going to give them a quick little seasoning of salt, just so we have some good flavor. I find that some people will put the salt into the flour. I don't find that I catch the flavor of that very well. If you're wondering why I'm up a little higher, I'm not down here. It just gives that as salt and even coating, or the meat and even coating of seasoning. Just kind of let it rain down. Okay. So we've got our station ready to go. We'll put the breaded cutlets over here. Just give the eggs a whisk. Remember, you're using this as kind of a binder, a glue, whatever the chef's term for it. I don't know. You put flour, egg, breadcrumbs. We're using panko. Traditionalists, I'm sorry, I know it was breadcrumbs, but you know what? I didn't have time to do the brioche bread or the milk bread that get it nice and stale. I didn't want to do that. And panko does a good job getting things nice and crispy, and it looks pretty. All right. Just for time saving, I don't normally do this, but just because we're here in the kitchen and you guys are looking at a bunch of meat, flour, and eggs, and then whiskey in the background. Life's good. we are going to just use some rubber gloves. It kind of prevents my hands from getting all nasty and stuff like that. So what we do is you add the pork, the meat, whatever meat. You can use turkey, you can use chicken, beef, veal. You can even actually do this with a vegetable. Egg. I'm sure you could do it with eggplant, or for crying out loud, I mean potatoes. Come on, fried potatoes. But you want to make sure you get that excess flour off. So you don't want too much flour on it, because what happens is if the flour gets too cakey, the things don't fall off, or the breading falls off. And so we get the egg wash again. We want a nice even coating. This is the messy part. This is the part everybody loves. Get a nice coating of breadcrumbs. Purists, I know you guys are going to freak over the pounding of the, not me not pounding, but just like I said, this is just my my take on things. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. We're going to get ready to fry our cutlets. Y'all, it's Saturday night. We're not eating healthy. Here's the thing, like the pan sauce, we're going to reduce that a lot. And we're going to add a lot of butter to it. Yeah, I'm sprinkling just a little bit of the breadcrumbs, and they immediately hit the water and they start to go like that. That's what we want. That's when we start to go, okay, now we know the oil's ready. So when we put it in, we want to put it away from us. See, I'm no gloves, nothing fancy, but we put it and we get that immediate bubble. I don't want to overcrowd the pan, because if I overcrowd the pan, the temperature of the oil drops off. So we'll let that cook. Nice thing, we'll have about 3 batches of these. So we'll have this nice batch, and we let it cook until golden brown. The nice thing about pork, don't overcook it. Please do not overcook your pork. You just let it cook until I'll be honest, medium. I like medium. But basically, once these are golden brown, they're going to be cooked all the way through, because of the fact that they are so thin, and they're actually lean. So this is pork loin. It's not pork tenderloin, but it's got a nice little bit of fat cap on the top of it, but actually running through it, it's a fairly lean cut. It's not like the fatty pork shoulders and pork bellies, which I ate way too much of yesterday. It's not quite there, but we want to kind of move them around so we got even heat. Maybe cast iron, they say, yeah, it's even heating, but let's be honest, it doesn't necessarily even heat. Little hot spots here and there. If you go over here, you look, we got a nice bubble going on it. Just let it boil. We want that reduced. We want that to be nice and thick, because, like I said, we're going to add some stuff to it to get some flavor to it. All right, those are looking good.
How high up is your oil there?
It's so this is what they said is they said about I've seen it where it's the really thin pounded ones where they just set it in. It could be anywhere from quarter of an inch, half an inch. Just depends on how you want it, the coverage. I actually like it to come up a little bit over. I think it gives a little bit more. It kind of supports. I feel it supports the meat. I may be wrong, but where you don't get those hot spots so much on the bottom. Nice crispy, nice and crispy. I'll be honest, people swear by panko. I like panko, especially when you're doing like, this would be like, this is, in all reality, if we wanted to take this and put katsu sauce on it, you'd have porkatsu. And there you go. This is a very universal dish. And with panko, you definitely want that. But I'll be honest, I do like what a breadcrumb does to a schnitzel when you actually use a real true breadcrumb, because it almost kind of, with panko they kind of stay crispy and crunchy like you can see here. And you see the little individual ones, whereas a breadcrumb will actually make a more solid, uniform coating across the top of it. But panko's what I had, so panko's what I'm going to use. And let's be honest, panko tastes really, really good, y'all. All right, so next one. Again, in the oil, it's hot. Pushing it away from you. That way the oil doesn't splatter back up at you. The thing I like about, you pound it, sometimes when you pound stuff, you'll see like the Schnitzel sandwiches that they have in Ohio, and they pound them, they're like this big, and they have a bun like this. The one thing I do like about this, or the pounding, it gives that nice lacy edge, but this kind of, especially when I'm doing it's more of a dinner and we're gonna cut and there's gonna be a sauce for stuff to soak up, this tends to lend itself better to that, my personal opinion. One thing I also like about the loin cuts, these loin cuts, is that they are, when you get them in a cutlet form, they're just a good size, they're a good portion. You can have one or two, depending on how hungry people are. So you can have, let's be honest, we don't need 3 cuts of pork on our things, but some of us do. Get that food baby going on. We've got the schnitzels. Sometimes they get a little dark, sometimes there's little white spots, sometimes they got a nice color to them. It's fine, they're gonna be really tasty, I guarantee it. So as we're finishing up the rest of the dinner, we're just gonna throw this into the oven on warm, just to let it stay warm. Nothing crazy. We'll do our greens next. Purple kale, washed a bunch of times. Y'all, I'm gonna put it in this pan. There's gonna be a little liquid that I add to it. I'm not worried about rinsing it. I've washed it 3 times, it's good and clean. I like the purple kale. We're dealing, like I said, we're kind of dealing with a little bit of a German influence here as far as our food. Influence, I said. A friend of mine, actually the guy who's behind the camera right now, that's why I'm giving him a hard time, attended a German cooking class, and they actually made a sauerbraten, and they did some sauteed cabbage or some braised cabbage, and it was purple cabbage. So I thought the purple kale would actually kind of be a fun little twist on things. And it also adds some nice texture because it's got this curly kind of thing going on to it. So what we're going to do is we've got this pan. We're warming it up. I'm going to add a little bit of olive oil to it. Yep. So what I did was I just had a little moisture on my hands still from washing my hands, and I did this and I heard it. I'm like, so pan's ready. So medium heat. Just a little touch of oil, don't need much. And what we're going to do is I'm going to saute some red onions. See this brown stuff right here? That's the kind of the caramelization that's happening. So we're just going to let these get translucent. I'll turn that heat down just a little bit. Pan sauce is looking good. Yep. So I'm going to add the rest of the garlic to this. Let that cook. So we don't want garlic to cook too long because then it just gets a kind of a off flavor to it, bitter flavor. And they just get about 30 seconds. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to deglaze with the pan with just a touch of apple cider vinegar. Maybe a little bit more. That's going to add just a nice caramely flavor, and now we're going to add our kale. A little bit at a time. And this is actually going to release a lot of moisture. And we're just going to add it until it starts to cook down a bit. A little salt, a touch of salt. And so you'll know that that vinegar actually makes this really full smell to it. But what happens is, as it cooks down, a lot of those flavors actually start to become very sweet and really nice, kind of just nice flavor that really pairs well with something like this. Like you have like a sauerbraten or it's kind of what we're trying to recreate here. One got away. This is one thing I love about purple kale, and this is, I think, a lot of purple. Yeah, didn't hit the ground. Come in a little closer. Look what's happening. It's turning green. The purple tends to cook out a little bit. A lot of the stuff came about because of the fact that, you know, I'm a firm believer in, we're in my house. Friends are over. Let's be honest, it's been one hell of a last couple of years on so many multiple fronts with COVID and the protests and the overall the politics that are happening, all of that sort of stuff, and we just kind of. So I'm sitting here and I was like, I'm a firm believer that our relationships are brought back together by food, sitting around the table, those sorts of things, and all, you know, our communities are built that way, breaking bread kind of thing. Connecting people with family, those sorts of things, bringing people back to just good food that reminds them of something. Like I said, it's a Northwest take on, and it's a Neil's Kitchen take on some of those things. So, almost done. So, like this, I said, this is what I love. It gets soft, but it still holds that lacy kind of volume texture kind of thing that adds lift to a plate to make a plate look really pretty. Because we eat with our eyes. All right, so I'm just going to put this into a little gratin, and oh, that looks really, really pretty. I am really happy with the way that turned out, the way that looked. So I'm just going to put it in the oven, keep it warm. Just set it right there. So we have this nice sauce, and it's getting nice and thick. It's going to be really, really good. I'm just going to let it continue to cook a little bit longer, and then we'll add some butter to it. But that's looking real good. Let me try that. Definitely need salt. I want this kind of a little bit more aggressive. This is where the flavor is going to come from when you add it to the schnitzel. Okay. I really would like to add a little touch of kind of an acid to this sauce. So what I'm going to add is a little stone ground mustard. Some people will use Dijon. I think having the little mustard seeds in this actually kind of lends itself to the more peasant style of, you know, the peasant style of the dish. Now, turn this off gas. Turn it off the gas. Now we're going to start adding our copious amounts of butter. This is going to thicken that sauce up. This is unsalted, out of the fridge, cold butter. Lots of websites talk about the different ways to do this, so so if it breaks at all, you know, you get the oil away, just add a little water, it'll come back together. But I've turned it off the heat. I'm just allowing the butter to thicken this up. Let's get this is all. You should whisk it. I don't have my whisk out, so just mix quickly. that butter will dissolve. The idea is that slow release of that cold butter aids in the emulsion. Add a little bit more fresh thyme to our pan sauce. What I'm doing is I'm actually kind of ladling it around a little bit on top, but the idea is we want to be able to kind of cut the meat and still have something to dip it in, where these breadcrumbs actually tend to absorb a lot of the moisture. Little fresh thyme. I'm just a firm believer. I absolutely love thyme. I think it's such a, especially with cuts like this, it just adds such a kind of piney pop. And so, there you go. Pork cutlets with braised cabbage. And we're good. Nice crispy crunch.
Yeah, nice crispy crunch. Get a little of this kale on here. Mmm.
Yeah.
Delicious.
Okay.
Really good.
Okay. This is what it's about.
Cheers.